Greetings once again, traveller. No doubt you are here for another one of my riveting tales. Tell me, traveller, are you familiar with the saying, appearances can be deceptive? What am I saying? Of course, such an intelligent individual such as yourself would be familiar with that saying, and I apologize wholeheartedly for assuming otherwise. Talking of deceptive appearances, I am suddenly minded of a tale on the subject. Be so kind, traveller, as to sit yourself upon that crate behind your person, and I shall tell you a tale I like to call the Newcomers. The Ffarqhuar branch line, also known as Thomas's branch line, is on the western side of the island. It starts at Tidmouth, passes through Knapford, Dryall, Torryreg, Elsbridge, Mayfwade, and Hackenbeck before finally terminating at Ffarqhuar. Beyond Ffarqhuar is the Ffarqhuar quarry, where stone is brought down and taken away to be used in construction. Thomas is very proud of his branch line, as it was a reward for his heroic actions in the rescue of James after the latter's traumatic crash on his first day as a North Western engine. Sadly, Thomas can be a bit too possessive of his branch line, seeing any changes on it as an intrusion and a personal insult towards him. Recently, an elderly lady who lived next to the Ffarqhuar station master had passed away, and her children had put the house on the market, as neither of them could see an opportunity they'd have to live in it. Within a couple of days of the house going on the market, word passed around that a young couple had bought the house, and the Ffarqhuar engines watched as removal men lifted and carried boxes from lorries and into the house. Word also got around that the couple went by the name of Smith, the man being called John and his wife Jane. One afternoon, Thomas, Percy and Toby were resting in the sheds up at Ffarqhuar. Thomas was trying to doze, but was finding it difficult as Toby and Percy were talking earnestly about the Smiths.
I gave the Smiths a ride to Knapford today, and do you know what? When we got there, Mrs. Smith came up to me and thanked me for giving her such a smooth ride. Like floating on air, that's how she described it.
They really are a lovely couple, aren't they? My driver reckoned they must have been soulmates, the way they're always looking into each other's eyes and smiling at everyone.
Yeah, well, I hate them.
Oh, for God's sake. And why's that, Thomas?
They're not natural.
Natural? Natural? Have you been drinking sludge water or something? Just what exactly do you mean by them being not natural?
They're too perfect. Always smiling at everyone and never a bad word to say. Then there's their garden. My driver says to get the edges that neat, he has to use nail scissors and a ruler. As for their appearance, they look like a couple of shop mannequins with their sharp creases and perfect hair. And don't get me started on their teeth. I mean, who do they think they are? The Kardashians?
Thomas, you're acting like they were criminals or something.
Maybe that's what they are. I mean, John and Jane Smith, indeed. Why not Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher? Yes, I bet you're right, Toby. I bet there are a couple of criminals on the run from the law, or maybe, just maybe, they're communist spies.
Communist spies? Now you're just being ridiculous. What would communist spies be doing here in Ffarqhuar?
You really are thick, aren't you, Percy? They'd be convincing the workmen up at the quarry and the staff on the railway to go on strike, plunging the island and Britain itself to complete disarray. Well, my branch line won't become ground zero for the Red Menace's plan to see the hammer and sickle flying over Buckingham Palace. No, sir.
Thomas, no disrespect. Actually, scratch that. I mean all disrespect. But you are starting to sound utterly ridiculous. I mean, criminals at large, communist spies. Next thing we know, you'll be accusing them of being extraterrestrials or lizard people, like what my driver says his kids read about in their comic books.
Take my advice. Thomas, let this silly vendetta you've got against the Smiths go before it gets the better of you.
But Thomas refused to back down. Every time he saw one or both of the Smiths, he would wheesh steam at them or ignore them. Toby and Percy kept trying to convince Thomas that he was being silly, but Thomas doubled down even more. Annie and Clarabelle also tried to convince Thomas, but they eventually gave up trying because they knew what Thomas was like.
Has he calmed down yet, Anne? Not yet, Clara. But I wouldn't pay much need. We know what Thomas is like. In about a week, we'll find something or someone else to complain about. Ah, typical men. Amen, sister. Amen.
Thomas's protests about the Smiths carried on for quite some time. From the moment he woke to the moment he went to sleep, he ranted incessantly that there was something nefarious about the Smiths and how they needed to be stopped. Eventually, Toby and Percy had had enough.
That's it, Thomas. I can't take another minute of you spouting this utter garbage. I'm out.
Yeah? And just where are you planning on sleeping tonight?
At Tidmouth, well away from you and your bigoted nonsense about the poor Smiths.
I'm going as well. If I were you, Thomas, I'd use the time alone to have a good hard think, and maybe, just maybe, you realise just how immature you sound.
You think I care? Fine. Go on. Go and spend the night without me. But mark my words, I'll find out what they're up to, and then we'll see who's immature and bigoted.
Once Percy and Toby were gone, Thomas sat and listened to the crickets chirping and the owls hooting before eventually, grumpily, drifting off to sleep. Thomas wasn't sure how much time had passed, but as it was still dark outside, it obviously couldn't have been his crew who'd softly opened the door to his berth. As he slowly opened his eyes and blinked the sleep away, he suddenly became aware of the Smiths standing in front of him. Thomas glowered as the Smiths smiled back at him, never faltering for a second.
I wonder how long it'd take for you two to finally play your hand. So, what's the game, eh? Worried I'm getting too close to the truth, so I have to be silenced? Or maybe you were planning to steal me and sell me on the black market. Come on, out with it!
Actually, Thomas, we just came to talk, that's all.
Yes, we want to know what we've done wrong to upset you. Ever since we moved in, you've been nothing but hostile to us, even though we've showed you the greatest of kindness. Please, Thomas, tell us what's wrong.
You can shove it with the simple misunderstanding routine. I'm on to you. You've got Percy, Toby, and everyone else fooled with this hi diddly-ho, neighbory-o song and dance you've got going on, but it's not fooling me. You want to know my problem, love? You're trying too hard.
What do you mean, Thomas?
Always smiling, always cheerful, looking every day like you came out of a box freshly painted. You seem more like something trying to be human than something that's actually human.
For a while, the Smiths said nothing. They simply looked at Thomas, then at each other, and then back at Thomas, their smiles never wavering. Eventually, John spoke.
All right, Thomas. You got us. It's clear to us that our disguise isn't fooling you.
And as you really seem determined to find out our little secret, then it would seem we have no choice but to show you. Wouldn't you agree, my dear?
Absolutely, darling. We really should reward his tenacity. Okay, Thomas. Don't blink now. You're not going to want to miss this.
Oh, don't worry. I don't plan on missing this. In fact, I've been dreaming of this ever since I first... Hey, are you two all right? Oh God. What are you?
Right, Mr. Number One Engine. I hope you did some serious thinking last night and are ready to... Whoa!
Thomas, you look terrible. What in Audrey's name happened?
I'm fine. let's just get back to work.
Thomas never told anyone what happened that night, not because he thought that no one would believe him, more that he dreaded to think what form of retribution might befall him if the Smiths, or rather those things that called themselves the Smiths, ever found out he talked. Well, dear traveller, it would seem that Thomas has landed himself in quite the predicament. He greatly desired to out the Smiths as fraudsters, yet got more than he bargained for. Yes, it very much sounds like Percy was close to the truth. He just didn't know it. Of course, that's not to say the beings known as Smith were from the outer cosmos or from the Earth's core. There's many a thing they could be, and many a thing they could not be. Ah, the clock doth toll the hour, and summons me back to my work. Safe travels, dear fellow, and be wary of your surroundings. Remember, looks can be deceiving.